Okay, so hello everyone, I'm Tiffany. So just a quick welcome to all of you coming in. I'm going to do a quick repeat if you've just joined us. So we will be recording this just in case there's some, hopefully there's some nugget of information that will be helpful to others. So if you don't want your picture recorded, just go ahead and stop your video. Also, if you have any questions during the presentation, please put them in the chat and I will address them towards the end. I'm going to do about a 20-minute, somewhere around there, presentation for you all about intentional decision making, and then we'll do a Q&A afterward. Get some tea, some coffee, welcome, and I look forward to hopefully providing you with some good information. You all have important decisions to make about your future plans during the COVID crisis. We're all living through a time of uncertainty. Through this webinar, I hope to provide you with some tips and tools to help you contemplate your future plans when the future feels anything but certain. Many of you shared decisions that you're trying to make, whether to go to graduate school next fall, a change in career plans. We hope that through this webinar you will be able to create a framework to contemplate your plans. So to start off with, there is no one-size-fits-all approach to decision making. Everyone has a unique and individual reasons, thoughts, goals for their actions and future planning. What I hope to do is to provide some ways to tap into your unique values and systems in order to feel clarity around who you are and what you can decide from where we are right now. So a little bit of background. So I'm Tiffany Decker. I'm Senior Assistant Dean of Academic Affairs at General Studies. 5 years ago, I started the graduate school coaching program. Some of you in this webinar have attended this program. We've had over 400 students go on to graduate school from this program, and it's been just an incredible journey. I've also been an advising dean in GS and helped over 1,000 students on their academic and educational journey. I'm originally from Bakersfield, California, so you can see that picture there of good old Bakersfield, and I was the first in my family to go to college. So through that process, I learned so much about access to and through higher education. It became a kind of calling for me. Once I started teaching, I did Teach for America in Newark, New Jersey, and I was very fortunate to be able to take something that really is very meaningful to me in terms of access and now do that at GS. We have some other people on our call today who are really amazing. So we have the team members from the Columbia Center for Veteran Transition and Integration here. It's been such a wonderful partnership with Columbia Center for CVTI, as they're known. In fact, many of you, we have RJ Jenkins on the line today. You may know RJ. He's at a deep.
They're both recorded though, so that's.
Oh, hold on one second. If you don't mind just muting your.
Yeah.
I think we have somebody.
Go for it.
Okay, hopefully they're muted. Thank you. So we have RJ again here on the line with us. RJ actually hired me for GS, and he does so much work on intentional decision making. Towards the end of this presentation, I have some links for some videos that he's done on intentional decision making that are really fantastic and wonderful. We also have Beth Morgan from the center, who I've worked with and collaborated with, who has done some really amazing work for veterans transitioning into higher education. It's just a really fantastic special team. So I'm excited to be here with all of you today. So let's go back in time a little bit. March 1st, 2020. We all may have had some sense of what the road ahead looked like. Maybe it included graduation or a job or an internship that you had lined up. Most of you who are on this call, you're probably careful decision makers. You may have thought 2 or 3 months ahead, and you tried not to be in the indecisive state that you may be in right now. And yet, here we are, April 2020, and our world has changed dramatically. The road that looked perhaps straight ahead, sunny skies on the other side, has gotten a lot twistier and turnier. And maybe it's even going up into the Alps who knows where that road is leading to right now. In fact, we may not even be able to see the road because we're at home. I currently live in a 3-generation household, so I had no idea at the beginning of March that I'd be spending April trying to keep my 70-year-old father-in-law from venturing out to get bagels. But here we are. You know, it's a difficult time, and I want to acknowledge where we are, and that many of us are struggling with job loss in our immediate families, health, tremendous grief. And so I want to start this by saying we just couldn't plan for where we are right now. With that being said, there are some things that we can do right now to be intentional, to be mindful about this next place and where we're going. So I want to talk a little bit about the concept of liminality. So even if you had a pretty good idea about where you were going, now you're most likely in an in-between state, or in fancy psychological terms, liminality, an in-between place. There is what used to be and what is yet to be determined. And this in-between place can be very uncomfortable. It can be scary. We do our very best not to be in uncomfortable liminal spaces, and yet here we all are. The structures that we relied upon, the things that we thought would be there for better and for worse, just may not be at the end of this, and we don't know what's next. So where do we go from here? What can we do in this space to feel some security, to feel like we can make some plans going forward? So we have to just stop. We have to just be. Take that deep breath. This is the hardest part for decision making. We have to just be where we are. We have to be gentle and kind to ourselves, even our worry selves, especially the parts of us that worry. For those of us like myself who live in a future place, who like to plan forward, this can be really hard. And while mindfulness and the psychology around mindfulness has taught this for some time, there's some additional psychological research that shows that slowing down, being in the space that we're currently in, actually helps us make future decisions. We can be really biased towards action. We can want to make decisions, get things going, move forward. But in a space like this, sometimes the best decision we can make is to just stop, take that deep breath, and be. So think about where you are right now. See if that resonates with you. If it does, great. If not, that's fine too. We can talk about some other things that may help. So from going from be to being is hard. Trying to carve out that space and time to be mindful is hard. Mindfulness doesn't have to be just sitting in a space meditating, even although if you can, that's great. Do that. But for me, at least, I've noticed that doing something mindful, being by doing, is working. So for example, because I live in this 3-generation household, we've stopped doing anything that stopped getting groceries, having any interaction as much as we can with the outside world, just because of my in-laws' health concerns. And so my partner and I decided to make bagels from scratch last weekend. We were determined that we were going to do this. And through the action of doing this, and actually we just sat in front of the oven and watched these bagels rise. And it was a 3-hour process. But it was really a mindful process, and I was able to actually find a little bit of a quiet place inside me during this time of just being with making bagels. So you can be in a kind of mindful place while also doing something. If you're able to go for a walk, if you can get outside, just paying attention to putting one foot in front of the other. That's a way of being mindful. Or even just doing the dishes mindfully, paying attention for those 30 seconds or a minute while you're making the bed. These are some ways we can be mindful during this difficult time. And within this mindfulness is acceptance. So accepting where you are, even if it's frightening. Sometimes when we're fighting our feelings, it can add to the anxiety about where we are. I actually naively chose acceptance as my 2020 word to work on and live in action. And I did not think that there would be a global pandemic that I would need to accept in some strange ways. But accepting that fear in the pit of my stomach, so waking up at 2 a.m. and not fighting that, accepting that fear, accepting that worry, and not worrying about the worry has really opened up a way so that I can find a little bit of peace in this difficult time. This acceptance piece is also important because the future is just unclear. We've often created mental frameworks to feel more comfortable in the future, but in a lot of ways, these things are just illusions anyway. So taking the time to recognize that we're centered in this space, in this moment, with the tools that we need to formulate our plans from where we are can be liberating. Sometimes these difficult places, like where we are right now, can strip back some of the structures that we've placed around ourselves that maybe aren't as authentic as we would like them to be. And it gives us a time to be with our authentic selves if we would like to be. There are also a lot of things that we have to let go of right now. For those of you who are getting ready to go to graduate school or to do something next, you've had to work through letting go of campus visits, having some of these things that you thought you would be able to rely upon just not be possible right now. And I don't want to minimize this in any way. I think that anytime we have these kind of big disruptions in our plans, it does create a grieving process. And it's important to accept and work through that grief and to be with that space, not to rush it, and to acknowledge that it's not fair. It's not. And at the same time, accepting it and allowing to happen. So while you're doing the work of acceptance, if you can, or while you're doing this, there are no hard and fast rules here. If you're able to reflect, if you want to be in that space, please, please do. If not, we do have some tips for things that you can do that are more action oriented. So let's move on to reflection and action. But remember, it's always okay to stop and say that you need more time. You can say that right now in this webinar, or you can let your programs or internships or jobs know that you just need to stop and you need some more time. Be open with your process. So when you're ready to start reflecting, it's important to kind of go back to your meaning. In some ways, again, this time is unique in that it strips away those extra trappings of what we consider to be normal. In this space, again, no pressure. If you want to go there, you don't have to, but it can be a time to revisit, to reflect, and to plan forward in a mindful, intentional way. So here's where you can ask yourself some very important questions. What matters to you? Why does it matter to you? Who are you? How would you describe yourself? How would you like to describe yourself? How do you find a path that you like or maybe even love? What do you want your contribution to be? Do your previous motivations under the pressure of the present moment hold up? Do they still resonate with you? Are you still inspired to move forward with your educational or career plans? These are some things that you can think about as you think about meaning. What matters to you? And as we move forward, how can you be curious about that? When I was doing this presentation, I will say that I got really into all these photos. I really like these photos. And when I was Googling the curiosity photo for this, there's so many pictures of children and animals, and I think it was just a real moment for me to realize that we often don't have that, what's sometimes called a beginner's mind, that kind of real curiosity about ourselves, about others. And this can be a time for us to explore ourselves, to think about what we like and what we dislike, what matters to us, what our values and goals are, right now, not in some future time. Revisit the things that you've already written. Some of you have written personal statements for either school or for maybe a cover letter, something that you've written, and you can go back to that and say, does that still resonate with me? Do my values, do my goals, do what I'm saying, does that still matter? Explore that. It's still a great time to think big, to dream big, but also to be, you know, expansive and right here where we are right now. So move forward while also thinking about where you are. Move at your own pace and cultivate that beginner's mind with curiosity. So once you're doing, or as you're doing some of these reflective practices, one thing that you can do is, I think it's so important to write down what you're thinking, write down what your explorations look like. We can be in our own head so much. Get things down on paper. Writing makes it real. I actually keep 3 journals, which is way overkill, way overkill. I know this. I have a gratitude journal, a worst case scenario journal, and a planning journal. And I mean, I do not do these every day, but when I need to put in certain things, it's really helpful for me to have them in there so that I can revisit that and say, oh, well, this was really important to me. This was really mattered to me. And to just get all those things on paper and outside of what's going on in my head. It really helps me to see what matters to me. And I think that once you have some of these things down, once you're doing this process, you can start brainstorming. What may your plans look like? What do things look like going forward? I usually don't like to say plan A, plan B, plan C, because we think A must be best, but maybe you create like plan magenta and plan blue and plan, I don't know, some other color. And you're weaving these things together. You may have discovered through being at home together or as an essential worker, whatever you've been doing for these last 2 months, that there are certain things that you really love that you didn't know that you loved about yourself, or that you want to develop a certain skill set. Write these things down and start to weave together a plan and see what kinds of information do I need in order to find out whether this fits me well. Think about the skills, think about the values, think about those things that may help you weave together something for the future. We don't know what the future is going to look like. We don't know exactly what jobs are going to look like. We don't know exactly what higher education is going to look like. But you know who you are right now in this moment, and you know what matters to you. Maybe you discovered a love for baking like I have, or something else, and you can think, how does this fit into how I perceive what I would like to do moving forward? I realized that my love for baking probably comes from my love of planning. I like to see all the stages and how it all works out. So there's different things that you can kind of weave together to create various plans. And once you have these various plans, oh, there's my slide for plans. Once you've worked on these plans and you have maybe a couple that you would like to figure out and move forward, then it's time to connect, to reach out. Wherever you are on your journey, reach out. When you're applying to undergrad or grad or whatever you've been applying to, you may have been consumed with that process, and now you have the opportunity to reach out to alumni, career, and other contacts who can help you make a decision. One of the things we have right now is almost everyone is at home. Not everyone, not at all, and I don't want to minimize that in any way, but a lot of people are at home, and you can get onto LinkedIn and send a request for a 15-minute Zoom call to connect about your next step. You could reach out to alumni from different programs, CEOs, executives, anyone you're thinking about that you hope to pursue. I actually did this 2 weeks ago. I wanted to know about some other program at another school doing something similar to what I'm doing. And I just said, hey, let's connect. And people are really sympathetic to indecision right now and would be happy to share their advice. So this is a great opportunity to do that. I also love this idea, because of these types of platforms, of thinking aloud together. So do some online chats that are unstructured with your family and friends. If you have a big decision that you need to make coming up, record that chat and go back later and see, what you discussed? Were there priorities that you didn't know you had? Maybe you referenced something multiple times and you look over and you were thinking, wow, it really mattered to me. I thought what really mattered to me was location, but I keep talking about the opportunity to connect with people from various countries. I didn't know that that was important to me. And so having these places where we can have open conversation via Zoom and record that and look back over it and say, oh, this was actually important to me, can also be a great way to connect. RJ, who's on this call, talks a lot about interlocutors, people who you can go to for advice and to talk through what your plans may look like, whether those are professors, people in the field, various people. The next thing that I want to recommend is prototyping. So trying on a decision. So maybe you've narrowed what you're thinking about in this next stage down to 2 or 3 options, and you just don't know what to do next. So after talking with people, after getting and collecting information, you can try on this decision. So for example, let's say you're trying to decide between 2 programs, whether you should go, which ones you should go to. Get out a journal, physical or a Google Doc, to record your thoughts. Then let people know that you're going to do this prototyping experiment. So what you basically want to tell your family and your friends and the people who you will encounter is, I'm going to try on this decision for 3 days. So you try it on. Basically, you live like that is your decision. You're not wishy-washy about it. You say, this is it. Then write it down. Reflect as you've made that decision. What does it feel like? Is it exciting? What was scary? What questions do you have? And then after 3 days, you can change direction and try on these other decisions. Right? Again, do that reflection. And this type of prototyping, trying on decision, can really help if you have maybe several things that you're working through. Many of you are trying to figure out, how do we do action at home? So maybe you were going to work for a little while or do an internship. So many of us learn about our direction through the act of doing. The reflective process that we're sitting here and can absolutely be done in terms, particularly in terms of values is so important. But there is a lot of value as well in actually doing things. And many of us feel, well, how do we do things when we're here? What can we work on to know what really matters to us? And so I think that it's important to really look at the skills that you want to hone right now. So let's say you would like to work on your quantitative skills, for example. So maybe you had an internship where you're going to do that and it's been canceled. Well, maybe you can take an online course or volunteer at a food bank to work on their inventory control, something along those lines. Or you had a research opportunity this summer that you were hoping to do that doesn't look like it's going to work out. So maybe though you can write on your own and submit it for publication. You can create a poster for a poster session that's on a virtual online conference. There are some other ways that we can brainstorm, ways that we can still have action and develop skills even when we're at home. One tool that I really like and I use with my students quite a bit is this website called somethingpop. So let me pull it up really quick. This is a great resource to rank your priorities. Put them here and see how it comes out. So, oh, I have a delay on here. But basically, it's just this decision-making website. So which job to take, you put down your priorities. So some of that reflection that you may have done before, you can put it in here. You basically rank your priorities. So this is usually one that students have, location. You can see some of them are already in there. And then you go through, and what can be great is that you can see, oh, okay, sorry. While I'm doing this, it obviously doesn't work because that's the nature of doing a webinar, but it's a great way to be able to see what matters to you. And then also, once you put these things in there and rank them, how things come out. And sometimes you have a feeling where you're like, no, that doesn't seem right. And you can listen to that feeling, because that gives you feedback as well. If something doesn't feel right, why doesn't it feel right? What is that telling you? So using a tool like this can be a kind of fun, quick way to weigh and prioritize some decisions. The big thing that I want you to remember, though, is that you're making a choice. If you have some things that you're thinking about doing in the future, there are multiple right choices. There is no absolute one best choice. We all learn through our various choices and we grow. We're all making new decisions and learning from these decisions every day. Ultimately, the decision that you make is a choice, not the choice. Once you make your decision, be proud of the work that you did and congratulate yourself for making that decision. And remember, right now may not be the best time to make a decision. It may be a time to just sit and be. That's fine too. So I want to share a couple of the resources that I have, and then if you would like to put some questions in the chat, that would be fantastic, and I would love to answer your questions. I know I got a couple during the registration, which was wonderful. So some of the books that I've been reading and trying to kind of synthesize are, Fear, Radical Compassion, Man's Search for Meaning, Designing Your Life. I have that one actually right here. I really like that book, Designing Your Life. Thinking Fast and Slow. And I really like this other one, Couples That Work by Jennifer Pagliari. If any of you have a family or thinking of having a family, that's a really, really great book to have in your library. Some of the web resources that I highly recommend: Intentional Decision Making. We have RJ here on the line. He did this great video series. It'll probably pop up. There he is. That's a wonderful resource. The Attaining Higher Education website it's for transitioning veterans, but I would say I've used it for almost every student, and it's been such a great resource for those who need anything from growth mindset. There's so many different pieces in here that can be very helpful. And then again, this somethingpop website. I really like that one. I have a lot of fun with that one. So I hope this gave you a couple of things to think about as you're making intentional, mindful decisions. Now I'd just love to answer any questions that you all have. Okay, so I received a question from Ariel. If I can't get a job upon graduation, should I just go to grad school even though I'm not sure what I'm doing with my life and it will be a financially difficult decision? That's a great question. I'd wanted to work for a few years and then decide what graduate program to go based upon my career needs. So I think that this is a time where, again, it's fine to be in the space where you're thinking, okay, what do my various plans need to be? So stopping to say, okay, plan A was to work for a couple of years and then go to graduate school, but the job market is looking a little bit, I don't know what that's going to look like. So my plan B is to go to graduate school. I think what would be a great way to tackle this is to really think about why. Why do you want to do these different directions? If you're thinking about going to graduate school to work on a certain skill, is that a skill that you would like to work on right now? Or do you want to have that space through work? That didn't entirely answer your question. So what I would basically say is be present with what you want from both work and from graduate school. If graduate school right now is just a stopgap to, because of the employment market, and then it's probably not the absolute best choice for you right now, you have to just really listen to what your reasons are and what matters to you and why you would like to do that. And if, on the other hand, you think, wow, I really could get some of those skills that I want through a graduate program, then perhaps that is a great plan B or plan magenta, or however you want to think about that. And you can explore which programs may fit the type of skills that you would like to consider. Okay, so let me go to Arnold. I'm having a hard time to decide whether I should continue with a PhD in economics or an MBA. Great question. So what you can do to think about this further is, again, this is a wonderful time to be able to reach out to professors, to students in MBA programs. I know that many students whom I have worked with in the past who are now in graduate school would love to connect with current students, alumni who are thinking about going to graduate school. So please connect with professors in different departments, connect with students in different departments, and write out exactly what you're hoping to do. So if, for example, you would like to be a researcher, be an academic, then that PhD in economics will absolutely get you in that direction. If, on the other hand, you would like to, in some ways, think of yourself as a practitioner, then the MBA may be a good choice for you. It really depends upon how you see your everyday looking. What type of work do you imagine you're going to be doing? Really thinking about, what do you like to do every day? Do you like research? Do you like putting plans into action? These things can really tell you which direction may be the right one for you. Also, of course, we all have to pay attention to what the job markets may be looking like. Right now, we don't have that clear of an idea of what's going to happen, but paying attention, you know, being mindful about what's going on in the world can absolutely be helpful and help with making that decision. I read the Chronicle of Higher Education almost every day to understand like what's going on in academia. And for those of you who are thinking about PhDs, I recommend, you know, reaching out to those who've done PhDs, paying attention to what's going on in the higher education world as an important part to find out whether this is going to be a right step for you, both in terms of what you're actually going to do in graduate school and also what the job market may look like after graduate school. Okay. I hope to find out when a master's degree is worth it for a gap year between medical school versus pivoting away from academics to gain more experience to make sure a particular master's is the right fit, especially since it would be good timing now between hopefully medical school rather than doing a master's in medical school. So again, we have kind of a similar situation where will those kind of action, you know, job skills be an important part of what you need to do to decide which master's program you would like to do. So if you know that you would like to do a master's degree before going to medical school, then it may be worth really exploring, is this the right time? I will say that the higher education, the grad school market right now is shifting pretty dramatically. I'm paying very close attention to what's going on in admissions, and admissions is very open right now. So if you are considering applying this year, it will probably be a good application year for students who are looking to apply. With that being said, you should only apply if it's the right choice for you. So having those discussions with people who are in the master's degree program that you're thinking about, having the discussions with people in the job field that you're thinking about doing in that year between for medical school is really an important piece of this. Ask people, what do they do every day? One thing that was really helpful for me as I was thinking about whether I wanted to pursue a PhD was when I spent a year writing a lot of grant proposals and realized I do not like writing grant proposals. And so knowing some of these things about yourself can be really helpful, and keeping track of what matters to you and what skills you really do like to use on an everyday basis. Okay, great. So from Charlotte Marie, I have many things that I'm passionate about, interested in. How do I turn those into a career? That is such a great question. We all have so many things that we really care about, right? And I know that for me, for example, I was a teacher and then I was a designer. I did large events, and then I transitioned back into education. And it always seems like, well, what do those things have to do with each other? Right now, what I finally realized was that as a designer, I really loved sharing and helping people show who they were visually. And now I get to do that when people are applying to graduate school. I get to help those of you who are going to apply write your story and demonstrate who you are through your application. And so really the skill set isn't that different. It's just a different way to use that. And so one of the things that I think you can think about is doing that kind of brainstorm map where you have, okay, these are the things that I'm passionate about. Maybe there's 5 or 6 things that you're really, really passionate about. And then start drawing where these things intersect. So maybe there's a certain skill that they share. Maybe it's a, maybe it's a certain place, whatever that may be, and kind of doing that mapping to see, okay, this is where these things all align. And you can kind of start having those discussions, connecting with people to say, where does this all fit together? Do those kind of interlocutor connecting discussions to brainstorm, where could these different things fit? We all hope that all of our passions will interconnect, but sometimes, things can also be a hobby, and that's fine too. I don't design houses anymore, but I do it as a hobby, and that's really, really exciting. I'd love to know, RJ, if you have any thoughts about how to integrate passion into a career decision.
Yeah, can you hear me okay, Tiffany?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think actually though my answer may be slightly disappointing, but I want to reach out through the screen. And Tiffany, thank you so much for this conversation. It's whether or not you're trying to apply to graduate school, making decisions in this moment has been tricky. So I've really appreciated your insights. Relative to the conversation of passion, education, and career choice, I just wanted to add a little something, reach through the screen to those of you who are suddenly whenever you hear the word passion, you immediately feel self-conscious because you're afraid that you don't have one of those, at least as it relates to your education or to your career paths. Maybe you're passionate about something in your life that isn't something you're studying or something you want to do for a living. And I think that sometimes conversations around passion and career can create a little bit of a stigma for folks out there who don't necessarily feel very passionate about a particular topic or haven't found one of those yet. So for those of you who are passionate about biochemistry and want to become a biochemist, or for those of you who are passionate about primate skeletal biology and want to become a physical anthropologist, we're thrilled for you. And that happens a lot for people. But for those of you who are out there and you aren't sure that you've identified an academic passion, please don't panic, right? That's okay. And I think what I would do is, if you're not sure what you're passionate about, turn the volume down on that question a tiny bit and ask yourself instead, what do you enjoy? And what are you pretty good at, or what do you enjoy getting better at? And I think sometimes when we turn the volume down on the question and we substitute a word like what do I like or what do I enjoy instead of what am I passionate about, it makes us feel a little less performance anxiety around making some of these choices. So I agree with Tiffany completely. Look out into your world at the things that you're drawn to, at the questions that you like to ask. What kinds of intellectual work do you like to do? And see if there's a place where some of those things come together and meet. And of course, talk to your faculty, talk to your faculty, talk to your faculty. So many of the choices that I ended up making, those choices were in part made through conversation with people who cared about me and who knew more than I knew. But also I think, don't let the fact that there's not a clear passion or a clear direction intimidate you from doing the other kinds of work that are necessary to make a next step.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it's okay that I'm doing the audio and not typing. It seemed easier. Yeah, I mean, I first of all, I really enjoyed the presentation, and it was interesting for me because I've had to face a lot of these questions myself this past year, just dealing with a lot of health issues. Like I already moved back home and have been on medical leave for the past year, so I had to really stop and think about like, what are my priorities? What are the things that are important? And I mean, those things to me are, I want to be able to live in a place where I have access to health insurance and don't have to worry about that. So for me, I've moved back home. I'm in France. And I want to be able to be near my family. And I just like, the thing about the passion statement is that I already know that the things I'm most passionate about aren't going to be the things that aren't necessarily going to be my career. I mean, like, I want to be a good family member and like a good member of my community and be healthy. Like those are so that's not, but then it's just translating. There are a lot of different areas that I'm interested in, and a lot of like intellectually. Oh, and also I don't want to be bored. I don't I don't necessarily need to make a lot of money, but I don't do well when I'm bored. And if I have everything else, like if I'm close to my family, if I have my health under control, like a big flashy career isn't necessarily what I need. But then it's how do I turn all these different like interests and potential fields of study, potential fields of work into something that kind of makes sense. Like my biggest thing is I have absolutely no idea where to start.
That's such a great question, Charlotte. And I think that, you know, the fact that you've done so much of this work, thinking about what matters to you, why it matters to you. And I think that I'm hopeful we'll see what really comes from this time. But I think that many of us are hopeful that some of these pieces of our lives, you know, right as this webinar was starting, my son was doing his class and behind me, that perhaps some of these pieces that have been separated because of how career and family and all these things have been, you know, decoupled in so many ways. I think many of us are hopeful that there could be a kind of integration through this experience. We'll see how things play out, but I think that, you know, if that's a priority, which it is for so many of us, to see what those of us who are privileged right now to still have our employment, to still say that these things are important and have to be integrated in a way that is meaningful so that we can move forward. I think, you know, that kind of piece where you have so many different interests and you're thinking, well, where do I even just start? Take that for pick something. Maybe there is an integration between different things, but also just taking that first step can help, because then you're able to say, oh yeah, I like that, or no, I don't, and kind of readjust as you need to. We're all making these decisions. There's not like a completely clear path. I'm learning something new. We're all learning something new about ourselves as we're doing it. And so sometimes I think that we think we have to have like such a linear plan in some way that it can make it difficult to just get started. So yeah, thinking about where you are in your community, you know, if you want to, maybe I'm just going to latch onto this. It could be totally not true for you, but maybe it's something about like being able to be a part of your community where you are right now, and you volunteer to call people who are at home and see, do I like having that kind of conversation? Do I like that kind of intensive listening or providing feedback? You know, like what are some of the things that maybe we can do from this space that at least get you started to see, do I even like doing that? You know, and that's good feedback to have.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think that sometimes we can feel like, and especially in a place like Columbia where so much pressure is put upon doing like the right thing, that it's like, oh, well, if I didn't have this, or if I didn't do this, then I'm off track. There is no like exact track. And so being able to say, well, I'm trying this to see if this works. And if it doesn't, I'm moving on. That's one of the things I've always loved about working with GS students, is that many GS students, you've tried different things and you're coming to this from a place of a bit more self-knowledge about what really matters to you, but we're all working this out all the time.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
No problem. Let's see. How do we plan? Oh, let's see if there's a new message. Okay. Let's see. How do we plan our educational goals and plans after graduation if we plan on going to graduate school? So for those of you who are GS alums and students, we're here. The graduate school support and coaching system is here to help you. You can have individual advising appointments with me or Dean Graham. We have the grad school coaching series. This summer, I'm going to be doing a boot camp. So probably a 3-day boot camp. I'm still working out the details, where we will go through the application process in detail. You will write your essays, all that fun stuff. A lot of the things we talked about today in terms of values and goals, we're going to work on. The other thing is that I did film the exploration part of the graduate school module within the Center for Veteran Transition and Integration CVTI Attaining Higher Education course. So if you are interested in going into that and looking at some of those videos, that can be helpful as well. So we're here to help you with that piece. In terms of your educational plans, it really depends upon what kind of programs you're thinking about. So if you are thinking about a PhD, then you usually will want to major in the area that you are thinking about pursuing a PhD in. In some fields, this is not always the case. So for example, people can apply to sociology PhDs without necessarily being a sociology student, but for the most part, for the vast majority of PhD students, you are going to want to major in that. For most, and obviously for medical school, there's a lot of pre-med requirements that you have to do, even though you don't necessarily have to major in biology or chemistry or physics. So in terms of your educational plan, thinking about what kind of skills do I want to have? If you're thinking about going to law school, you don't have to major in political science or philosophy, but being able to know, do I really like intensive research and writing? That's an important skill for you to have. Many law schools have reached out to me and said, hey, we really love to have some STEM majors, some of that analytical reasoning from those types of majors in our program, but there's no real specific education path that you have to take for a lot of degree programs. So that's some of the things that students are often surprised about. They really feel like they have to major in a certain field in order to go to a certain graduate school, and that is not always the case. Of course, big asterisks, there are a couple out there that may be the case, but for the vast majority, that is not the case. Okay, so thinking about graduate school career options today. So I imagine that is, and I think this next one actually applies as well, whether it is time to postpone applying to law school. So in terms of what's going on in graduate school admissions, I think that right now is actually, if you do know you would like to go to graduate school, if you've done a lot of these exercises, if you've talked to people, things like that, to figure out that this is the direction you would like to go in, this is actually a good cycle to go into. I think a lot of graduate schools, they're changing a lot of their processes and procedures. I've seen some drop entirely, the GRE or the LSAT. There's changes going on that I think can be really beneficial to students. So if this is the cycle that you were thinking you would want to go into, then I personally don't have any hesitation if that's what you know you would like to do. If you're on the fence and you're thinking, oh, well, I'm just going to go to graduate school because I'm not sure, then doing some more of that, those discussions, the brainstorming, all of that, to make sure that the commitment of your resources and the time is worth it, I think is really important. So that's where I think things are going in graduate school right now. And again, I'm here to help you if you have more questions that you would like to talk about. So again, a graduate school question about online programs such as the School of Social Work. So I imagine this is, what's going on. Actually, that program is still open for admission. If you're interested in applying right now, let me know. But I think, thinking about like what things are going to be like because of the coronavirus and the economic fallout, like we're all going to just continue to watch it, pay attention to what's going on in higher education news, and figure out like, okay, is this right for me right now? Like don't move into it just because you're scared. Just sit in that place of what am I afraid of, and plan from a place of kind of centered, calm reflection, and not necessarily I'm going to do this because I don't know what to do next. There are people here, there are people CBTI, there are people who would love to talk to you about where you are right now, and help you figure out what may be best for you. I mean, you're going to figure out what's best for you, but help you figure out what's best for you. Okay, so another one about the graduate school application process and how the coronavirus changes things with that. So as I was saying, I think that graduate school admissions in particular will change for this cycle. I don't know how much longer, how if that will stay or not, but there are definitely changes happening this cycle. The GRE is online now. The LSAT is trying to be online. So we'll see if those things work out, then perhaps in future cycles, those things will be online. I think it's more accessible online. And so we'll just be watching, like, what do these updates look like, and whether or not they'll just be for this coming cycle, or whether they will be things that schools institute for the future. Okay, so we have something from Jonathan: graduate school, finding a job, and keeping my mind sharp. Okay, so I imagine this is just, you know, thinking about these different pieces. I really think that for many of you, having the Columbia piece is really great, because you can go on to LinkedIn and the Columbia Graduate School School of General Studies LinkedIn group, connect with alumni, talk to people about what's going on in different fields. Really think about the kind of skills and things that you would like to hone moving forward. And again, be curious. Be curious about what you would like to pursue, what really matters to you, and go from that place. And think about, are there skills that you would like to work on during this time while we're at home, if you're at home, and work on some of those things as well, if you're in a space where you feel like doing that. I mean, one of the things that I have really been talking to a lot of students about is this kind of idea that because many of us are home, that we need to do more, and that is not the case. If you need to just take care of yourself, just take care of yourself, you know, be in a place where you really want to do more exploration, and then come back and think about what are the skills that I would like to hone further. Okay, so, okay, I'm gonna go down, and then I'll go back up, because I have one from Heidi. I'm assuming a lot of the field work, say for the social work program, has to stop. Do you know how that's affecting people's abilities to get their master's in social work? That's a really, really great question. I think a lot of programs right now are trying to figure out how they're going to have lab work, how they're going to have some of these field work requirements. One of the things that, you know, in my conversations within higher education that I've been hearing is that many programs are determined that they are not going to delay students' degree progress. So of course, each program has to just determine how this will be done by the, you know, what requirements they have. But I know that right now every program is being very, very thoughtful about how students can get these requirements, get the lab work, get these things done without delaying degree plans to an extent that it would be disadvantageous to the students in the program. So this is one of those where I would absolutely recommend, you know, if you're thinking about applying, reaching out and saying, hey, you know, if things are online, how are you doing the field work? What is going on in this particular field? How is lab work going to be done? So I would absolutely recommend that. Okay, so let me see if there's another one. From so good to see so many of you. Contacting schools professors about pursuing PhD programs during this time. That's a great question. So I think that at this point, most professors, the vast majority, and I've been on many calls with a lot of professors, understand where we are and are kind of settled into how things are at this particular moment. If you would like to contact professors and talk through your plans, please feel free to do so. You know, we're getting ready to go into finals, but from what I'm hearing from professors, they're more than happy to talk through how things are going, what you may need if you're going into the next application cycle, and how they can help. I know that I've also been talking to several professors about, like, how do we do online research for this summer? What kind of opportunities can we provide for students? And I'm thinking about, and you'll probably see it in GS News announcements in the next couple of weeks, a way to, over the summer, do a kind of research. How do we take some of our papers and turn them into research that we can publish, things of that nature. So at this point, I think that, you know, reaching out to your professors and saying, look, I'm interested in applying this coming cycle. I'd love to talk to you about my plans. And just starting that conversation is absolutely great to do right now. So we have one from Jan, and then we're almost done. Oh my goodness. So career choice, plan path, and how to place integrate time with graduate school attendance within that. Okay, that's a great question. And I have a lot of students who often are wondering, where and how do I integrate graduate school into my career path plan? And I think especially for GS students, where many of you have already done some, had some career experience before coming to GS, whether that was in the military or, there's so many different variety of paths that many of you have had. Often students are surprised to hear that you can apply right out of GS if you would like to. Of course, it's always great if you know that you would like some more information about a particular career path to, try it out. But if you do know, then you can absolutely apply right from GS. Otherwise, please, of course, we're all watching about what the economic situation is going to look like, internships, etc. But if you know that you need some of that experience before committing to going back to graduate school, do that. Make sure that you do that. Don't just jump into graduate school because you're thinking about like, oh, I'm this age, I'm 40, I'm wherever I am, I have to do this right now. Going and doing anything is based upon what makes sense to you in that moment. I'm always having these conversations with students who are like, oh my gosh, I'm 31. If I don't go, when am I going to go? And I like to remind, for many of us, according to the lovely insurance information, many of us are going to have 100-year lives, hopefully, and we're going to have many opportunities to have these kind of twists and turns throughout our careers. So don't feel time pressure that you have to get something done in a certain time frame. We need to get things done when it's the right time for us to embark upon that endeavor. So just think about it that way and integrate those things as you would like to work towards something new or something different, or work on a particular skill set that you've identified as being important for you to hone, okay? Well, thank you, everyone. I think that's all of our questions, and it is exactly 1 o'clock, so we stayed right on time. I really appreciate all of you participating in this. I hope that it was a useful and valuable experience for you. Of course, if you would like to send me any feedback or have additional questions, feel free to email me. You all have my email address from the registration. It was great to see so many of you who I've worked with over the years. And for those of you who I don't know, I hope that we're able to connect in the future. Thank you so much to the CVTI team for being on here. You were great, and for taking care of so many of the logistical pieces of this. So thanks again.